Hey, it's RJ Ronquillo for Vola Guitars, and today I wanted to talk about probably one of my all-time favorite tones. Really, it's a whole vibe to a time in the 80s when Strat-style guitars with a humbucker in the bridge position were all the rage, especially with a handful of LA studio session guitarists. And in this video, I want to show you some ways I attempt to achieve the iconic tones of these studio legends, and most of them are my favorite players like Steve Lukather, Michael Landau, and Dan Huff. Now, at one point in time, pretty much all of those guys that I just mentioned used some sort of an HSS Strat-style guitar. And I think many people will say that it was kind of a way for them to get both the single coil vibe of Strats plus that Les Paul bridge humbucker crunch all in one guitar. And eventually I think it just became kind of a standard thing. So as far as the tones and the sounds go, the quintessential 80s LA session guitar clean tone was a little more than just a dry clean tone. It was the 80s after all, and the excessiveness that is kind of synonymous with the time period was also found in music production. So, you know, a good helping of effects like digital delay and reverb and chorus was part of this clean tone. Now, it's no secret that these LA session guys were known for huge rigs consisting of these refrigerator cases full of studio rack gear, running in stereo. And the idea behind them doing this was to achieve the sound that they would get from the studio itself, with the amp signal being processed by the mixing engineer through the various studio effects in the control room. Basically getting that sound and putting it in a self-contained rig that they could take to any studio session and have that consistency. But thankfully, for our back's sake and our wallet's sake, we can achieve almost identical tones these days with simple pedals. And you can still get a little crazy and run things in stereo if you want, and use like the amp's effects loop if you have one. But first, I just want to show you how you can simply do it in one mono signal chain. And for the 80s clean tone, and really the basis of all of this kind of tonal genre, is basically a compressor, chorus, delay, digital delay preferably, into a clean amp. Now, back in the day, the chorus sounds came mostly from rack units like tri-stereo chorus or an Eventide micro pitch shifting preset, or even a Roland Dimension D. Now, you can get by with most any mono chorus pedal. Lately, my favorite one is this LPD Tidal chorus, which is super easy to dial in, and it sounds great, and it's lush for being a mono chorus pedal. And just a disclaimer, you're going to see a few LPD pedals in this video, and it's really because they're really easy to dial in, these 80s tones that I'm going for. But there are obviously other pedal brands that are great for these chorus and delay sounds, Eventide, Strymon, Source Audio, and even Boss pedals. So my signal right now is just the Vola OZ going into my Friedman twin sister amp, set pretty clean. And I'm using the humbucker and the middle position. So when I turn on the chorus, so the way I have it set, and something that I really like about this pedal, and you'll see in some of the other LPD pedals, is it has a tone knob, so I can crank it up a little bit to really get it bright and digital sounding. As well as a level knob, which is kind of like a mix knob. So all the way down, there's no chorus effect, and turning it up brings in that chorus effect. So I really just have it dimed. I want all the chorus that I can get out of it. And the magic of dialing in chorus is really in the depth and the speed. And most chorus pedals will have these knobs. The speed is where you really want to find the sweet spot. So if I turn it up, you'll hear it modulating a little bit more. And getting more like a vibrato, right? So the sweet spot for me is dialing it right under where it starts, you know, modulating the pitch. So somewhere around there, and then I have the depth, you know, almost up all the way. If it's up all the way on this pedal, it's very prominent. So I just want to get it like 3 o'clock right there. Maybe less on the speed. So here is just the normal clean. Here's the chorus. Sounds great for being, you know, a mono chorus. I mean, obviously back in the day they were running stereo, but this is getting pretty close, and we're just running mono. Now for the delays, back in the day, they were usually using some sort of a lexicon, like a lexicon PCM 42 or 70. Basically any digital delay will do for this. We don't want that warm analog delay because the way we're using the delay, it's more like a background ambient effect, almost kind of like a reverb. So something digital with a clean and crisp repeat is kind of the goal. And one of my favorites, which is a very simple digital delay, is the LPD offset delay. The match between the LPD title and offset, you know, is a great pairing for this sound. And like the chorus pedal, what I love about the offset delay is, even though it's kind of marketed as an analog voiced digital delay, it does have the tone knob, which you can crank up all the way to get it nice and crisp and bright on the repeats. So I'll turn off the chorus for now, and here is the delay. Now you'll hear that I don't really have the level knob or the mix of the delay way up. Like I said, it's going to be more like a background effect. I'm treating it more like a reverb. I just want it in the background to give the sound some space. So I have the tone knob cranked to get that crisp digital sounding delay. And as far as setting the delay times, I kind of do it by ear, but a good starting point for this would be, you know, if we're talking in terms of beats per minute, 115 BPM, or in milliseconds, I think that would be 522 milliseconds. There's a website where you can do all the conversion. Something that I do is just get a metronome. So that's 115. And I think I have this set to right around there. Let's check. I mean, it's pretty close. And that's just kind of like a starting point. Obviously, you can make it faster or slower. 115 to 120 is a good sweet spot for this. And then the level I was talking about, I don't have it up too high. See, even there, that's a little bit too high. Once I get the once I bring in the chorus, you'll hear. It's okay, but I kind of like it, kind of split the difference. So maybe, you know, maybe under 20%, 25%. Just enough to give it that space when you're sustaining things, you know? And again, this is just a mono delay signal, so these two pedals together, what we're trying to do is get that lush, spacious, clean sound. So that's a good starting point. So another component in this that would also be very useful with this sort of clean sound, and also the lead sound once we get to it, is a compressor at the beginning. Now I find that it can help just even out the signal, especially if you're playing arpeggiated parts or even like hard strumming attacks. Now back in the day, the DBX160X was the rack unit that everyone was using. I'm using this new pedal from Crazy Tube Circuits called the Golden Ratio, mainly because it has a few compressor types to choose from, including a FET compressor, which is like a studio rack compressor, namely the Universal Audio 1176, which is still today a very popular compressor. Plus, if you look at the controls on the pedal, it's got a little more knobs than a normal compressor pedal has. The controls on the pedal are very much like a studio rack. So you can tweak it a little bit more than like a two-knob MXR Dynacomp. But that being said, any compressor pedal will do just fine, whether it's an MXR or, a Ross, Keeley. The goal is to just even out the signal. We're not going for a specific compressed effect necessarily. And the way that I have it set is just enough to smooth out the signal, not really slamming it down too hard. I mean, obviously you can choose to go a little bit extreme and squash it down, but the way I have it set, I'll turn off the delay and the chorus so you can really hear it. You might not even hear a big difference. You'll hear it mostly when I really dig in. And here's with it off. I mean, it's a very slight difference, but when you put everything together, just having that even sound really does help just that little bit. And I can crank the ratio and the threshold and the blend. So this has a blend knob so you can blend your dry signal and the compressed signal. This is all compression now. Here's with it off. So hopefully you can hear it getting squashed down a little bit more. But I set it, 50-50 on the blend, back off the ratio, back off the threshold. I still want to hear it compress, just so that I know that it's working. So when I turn everything on together, this is kind of where the money is. So when I go from like soft palm muted parts into hard strums, what the compressor is doing is kind of making both those different passages and those different intensities and dynamics kind of along the same level. Because, when you were working in the studio, the engineer wanted to do as little riding the fader as possible. So if you could make everything around the same level, that was golden. Without the compressor, okay, so now for the lead tones. It's really the same signal chain, but now with distortion. Back in the day, the greats used real amps and rack preamps like Marshalls and Mesa Boogie and Soldano. They weren't really using a lot of pedals back then. Maybe a tube screamer or a boost for some extra saturation going into the amp. But today we have so many great overdrive and distortion pedals, as well as amp in a box type distortions. And today I'm using the LPD 74, which is kind of like a 70s Marshall Plexi in a box. Now for the longest time I would put the compressor first and then my dirt pedal. But if you think about the signal path of these 80s racks, they would go into their amps or preamps first and then into these studio rack units, compressors, delays, chorus. So for this I have the distortion pedal first, going into the compressor, then chorus and delay. And I'm just trying to mimic what they had in their racks and how it was all routed. So let me turn off the delay, chorus, and the compressor, and just so you can hear what the 74 sounds like. You know, just kind of like that Marshall in a box sound, not super modern sounding. I feel like this is something that they would have used in the early 80s sessions, just kind of like, maybe like a modded Marshall type thing. Let's add a little compressor. So you can hear how it kind of squashed it a little bit and evened everything out. It kind of almost softens the top end just a little bit because that's what a compressor is doing. It's kind of squashing down the transients, and usually the high frequencies are the first ones to get squashed. So if you want to compensate for that on the distortion pedal, maybe up the presence. Now, I mean, if you wanted to tweak, you could put an EQ after it to add in the highs again, or you could just tweak the amp that you're going through. Now I'll add the chorus. Now I'll add the delay and get the space. What a wonderful sound. One of my favorites for sure. Well, there you have it, a simple way to dial in 80s LA session hero tones. Make sure you subscribe to the Vola Guitar channel so you can stay in the loop with more videos like this. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.